Hello. Good day, everyone. Welcome to Agricultural Economics, where we learn the endless possibilities, and that's why we need to create and innovate. Once again, this is your instructor, Sir Paul, and for this episode, we will be discussing farm management decision making process. For today's discussion, here are the topic outline that we will be discussing on this presentation. First, we will be looking into farm problem requiring decision of the farmer, in which we will be discussing production and organization problem decisions, second, administrative problem decisions, and third, marketing problem decisions. In line with this, we also need to discuss the problems in the field of farm management, and then third, relationship between farm management and other sciences. And of course, the last topic for this discussion is to discuss the basic concept of farm management. Now let's begin. The first topic for today is farm problem requiring decisions of the farmer. And the first to discuss is production and organization problem decisions, in which the farm manager has to take vital decisions on farm production enterprises and the organization of his business. His decision centers on what to produce and how to produce goods and produce. And such decisions can be further classified into strategic management decisions and operational management decisions. Now, strategic management decisions, now these are the management decisions which involve heavy investment and have a long-lasting effect. And this decision gave shape to the overall organization of the business. On the other hand, operational management decisions are being defined as continuously made to carry out the day-to-day operation of the farm business. Now, under strategic management decisions, we need to consider the following concern. The first one is deciding on the best size of the farm. Second, decisions on the farm labor and machinery programs. Third one is decisions on construction of buildings. And the fourth one is decisions regarding irrigation, conservation, and reclamation program. Now, let's go back first and discuss the first concern of strategic management decisions. Wherein we need to decide the best size of the farm because the size of the farm depends upon the type of farm business, irrigation potential, level of mechanization, intensity of usage of land, managerial ability of the farmer. Of course, the economic efficiency of each craft or livestock enterprise and their combination should be considered to decide upon the optimum size of the farm itself. Now, the second one is decisions on farm labor and machinery programs. Now, deciding the most profitable combination of the factors to be used in producing a commodity is one of the important farm management decisions. Now, we need to ask questions like what combination of farm labor and machinery should be adapted to get maximum returns? Second question that we need to consider is would it be profitable to vary labor or land to better utilize a given set of machineries? Now, these decisions are to be taken so as to reduce the cost of production. Now, the third one is decisions on construction of buildings. Now, decisions on the size and the type of building involve heavy investment, which become fixed resource in the long run for the business. Now, the type of buildings for the present pattern and level of production really depends upon the kind and level of crops, livestock to be produced. The fourth one is decisions regarding irrigation, conservation, and reclamation programs. Now, as an improvement of alkalinity, salinity, and other soil defects requires heavy investment. Now, conservation and reclamation programs often have to be spread over years. Now, the choice of the most economical method or combination of method of reclamation has to be made from among mulching, contouring, munding, terracing, and application of soil amendments. Now, laying down of proper drainage and so on. Now, decisions on irrigation program is also very crucial because it involves heavy investment as well. Now, it gives a flow of service over a long period of time and also improves productivity of other related inputs. Now, on this way, if we properly manage the farm, it will become a profitable farm possible. So I hope we will going to consider the strategic management decisions. And second one is operational management decisions. Operational management decisions are continuously made to carry out the day-to-day operations of the farm business. Now, the investment involved in such decisions is relatively small, and hence the impact of such decisions is short-lived. Now, these decisions are generally what to produce, how much to produce, how to produce, and when to produce. Let's discuss the first one, what to produce. This is the selection of the enterprises. Now, the objective of the farm business, for example, is maximization of returns, could be achieved through the best combination of different enterprises. Now, the relative profitability of these enterprises will be useful to determine what to produce and what not to produce. Now, the second one is how much to produce, meaning we need to consider the enterprise mix and our resources. Now, these decisions has two aspects. Now, let's discuss the enterprise mix. The enterprise mix combination of crop and livestock enterprises will depend upon the level of resources available, the fertility of soil, prices of factors and products, in addition to the existing complementary and supplementary relationship. Principle of substitution also is used to decide the level of each enterprises. For example, the scarce farm resources are first used for the most profitable enterprises, and then the best profitable enterprise is considered for inclusion. Now, however, apart from profitability of each enterprise, factors like labor availability for each enterprise, the size of land holding, use of byproducts, maintenance of soil fertility, the relative risk distribution of incomes over time, and efficiency in the use of machine power and building are considered to decide the level of each enterprise. Now, the second one is resource use. Now, the best combination and optimum level of inputs can be determined based on the substitution principle, and this have to be decided for minimizing the costs of production and maximizing of returns. Now, the third one is how to produce, meaning we need to select the least costs and, of course, the most efficient method or practice. Now, decisions here are made on the best practice or combination of practices and methods, which involve the least cost, and the choice making from among the various alternatives has become a management problem. Although the objective generally is to select the least cost combination of inputs method. Consideration has to be given on the availability of resources in required to quality and quantity at the right time. Now, when to produce, meaning we need to know the timing of production. Since agricultural production, as we've discussed from the previous discussion, we know that production in agriculture is season bound. Now, its timing has to be properly considered and decided. However, farmer faces difficulty in selecting season. If it is normal, early, or late for a particular crop due to non-availability of inputs in time, and as a result, a farmer could not fetch maximum price for the produce. Since we already discussed and learned production and organization decisions, where decisions are made to make sure that the work is done in the right way. Now, on the other hand, let's have the time to differentiate administrative problem decisions by discussing the following aspects that need farmers' decisions. Now, first is financing the farm business. Now, while some farmers have their own sufficient funds, others need to borrow money for production purposes. Now, the problem is related to this two concepts. We have utilization of funds within the farm business, and the second one is the acquisition of funds. For example, proper agency, the time, the type, and terms of credit. Now, cash flow analysis would be used to decide the timing and the quantum of credit required. And of course, we need to supervise the work. Now, the farm manager has to ensure that each job is done as it is planned, meaning we need to supervise that we have enough workers to work in the farm. And the third one is accounting and bookkeeping. We need to make use of recorded collections, analysis, and evaluation of data have to be done in order to assess the performance of the farm at any point. Now, here, decision is to be made on the kind of farm records, time allocation, and money to be spent on the type of activity that the farmer wanting to pursue with the farm business. Now, the fourth one is the adjustment to the government programs and policies. Now, government programs and policies on food zones, restriction on product movements, price support, policy input and subsidy, and many more influence the farm production and marketing of farm produce. Now, the farmer has to decide on the level of production and resource use with the maximum economic efficiency at the level of farm consistent with the government policy concern and programs. The last concern of a farm manager in terms to farm problems that requires them to make decisions would be marketing decisions. Now, a farm manager has to buy various farm inputs and sell out the produces in which he has to take rational decisions. Now, similarly, in selling out the farm produces, he has to carefully ponder over the following points in order to maximize his farm income. First, he needs to know what to sell. Second, when to sell, to whom to sell, and how to sell, and how much to sell. Now, these are the things that a farmer or a farm economist should be concerned about. Here are the common problems of farm management. These are categorized into 8 problems, and we will be tackling this one by one. But the following are small size of farm business. Number 2, farm as a household. Number 3, inadequate capital. Number 4, underemployment. Fifth, slow adoption innovation. Number 6, inadequacy of input supplies. 7, lack of managerial skills. And 8, we have lack of infrastructural facilities. Now let's discuss each one. Farm management problems can be categorized with small size of farm business, farm as a household, and inadequate capital. Now, for small size of farm business, unfavorable land-man ratio due to excessive family labor depending upon agriculture have weakened the financial position of the farmers and limiting the scope for farm business expansion. The second one is farm household, meaning, in most parts of our country nowadays, farmers, especially dry land farmers, follow the traditional combination of crops and methods of cultivation. Now, work habits are closely associated with food commodities, consume, and living conditions. Now, farm has become the means of their livelihood. Hence, subsistence farming is followed. Home management has heavily influences and gets influenced by farm management decisions. And the third one is inadequate capital. This is very apparent with our farmers today, wherein the new technology demands costlier inputs such as fertilizer, plant protection measures, irrigations, and high yielding variety seeds, as well as investment on power and machinery are very costly. Now, but perpetual debt and low marketable surplus prevent a farmer from adopting new technology. And and the fourth one is underemployment. Underemployment really result from the following factors. We have small size of the farm. Second, large supply of family labor. Third, seasonal nature of production. And fourth, lack of subsidiary or supporting rural industries. It reduces the efficiency and productivity of the rural manpower. Now, the fifth one, we have the slow adoption innovations. Now, this is very common in the Philippines because small farmers are usually conservative and sometimes very skeptical of the new technologies and methods because they are not accustomed to these techniques and methods. However, once they try new idea and they find it effective, they are eager to adapt these new technologies and methods. However, the adoption rate depends on the farmer's willingness and the ability to use the new information. Now, the sixth one is inadequacy of input supplies. Now, farmers may be really willing to introduce change. However, yet they may face difficulty in obtaining the required input of proper quality, sufficient quantity, and the time to sustain the introduced change. We have number seven, lack of managerial skills. And this is very important in our farmers in the Philippines, even if we are in the 21st century already. We still lack managerial skills among small farmers, and the adoption of new technologies and the use of costly inputs could not be followed by them due to many factors we can consider. Now, number eight, we have lack of infrastructural facilities. Now, infrastructural facilities such as marketing, transport, and communication are either inadequate or inefficient, and this may result in the shortage of capital and the quality inputs and non availability of inputs in due time. Now, let's discuss the relationship between farm management and other sciences. Now, farm management is an integral part of agricultural production economics because farm management is an intra-farm science, whereas agricultural production economics is an inter-farm or inter-region science. The distinction sometimes made between production economics and farm management is really based on macro and micro level contents, respectively. In so far as various agricultural economic problems regarding agriculture finance, land tenure, marketing, and many more are concerned at farm level. The field of specialization related to each problem becomes an integral part of a farm management. Thus, the farm management is closely related with other sciences like psychology and sociology. Farmer's ability to bear risk and uncertainty is influenced by his psychological characteristics. His decisions are also influenced by the customs, habits, and cultural values of the society in which he lives. The acceptance of the new product, production techniques, and methods in farming is also influenced by political decisions of the government, like restrictions or encouragement of growing of crops, ceiling on land holding, price policies, and many more. Another one is statistics. Statistics is another science that helps in providing methods and procedure by which data regarding specific farm problems can be collected, analyzed, and evaluated. And this will going to result better living standards and higher family satisfaction. Topic in this presentation is the relationship between farm management and other sciences. Now, farming as a business has many distinguishing features from most of the industries in the management methods and practices. Now, the characteristic of farming as a business are as follows. We have agricultural production is biological in nature. Now, agricultural production heavily depends on agroclimatic conditions, and agricultural production is carried out mostly in small size holding. Fourth, frequent and speedy decisions are to be taken up in agricultural production. For instance, there is no time to consider the merits of paying more wages to drain the field when there is a sudden monsoon flood. Fifth, agricultural prices and production usually move in opposite direction. Number six, lack of standardization of practices and products. By the use of machines and trained personnel, it is possible to produce large volume of products exactly the same in size, form, and quality. Such standardization of practices and products is not possible in agriculture. Now, grading system for agricultural commodities is also very weak. Seventh, slow turnover. Now, it takes a long time to recover the investment when we engage in farming. Eight, farm financing is more risky due to unforeseen circumstances like drought, pests and diseases attack, yield variation, and many more. Nine is the proportion of fixed costs is more in agriculture, and so adjustment and substitution of resources are very difficult. Tenth, inelastic income demand for farm products. As income increases, the demand for agricultural products will increase in a lesser proportion when compared with industrial goods. 11, perishable and bulky nature of agricultural commodities causes storage, processing, and transportation problems. 12. Lack of knowledge. All farmers do not know the latest development in agricultural technologies. 13. Agricultural markets are not regulated properly and there are too many middlemen in the agricultural marketing system. Whereas in the industry, the distribution of channels are well defined and controlled by producers. 14. Agriculture is considered not only a means of livelihood but also a way of life to the farmers in all the underdeveloped countries, such as um, many countries in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines. And the last topic for this presentation is the basic concept of farm management. We will discuss the farm firm and then resources or input or factors of production, ways of mobilizing farm resources, then the product or output, production, transformation, production economics, and production function. The first basic concept of farm management is farm firm. Farm means a piece of land where crop and livestock enterprises are taken up under a common management, meaning a farm is a firm which combines resources in the production of agricultural products on the line of making a, a farm as a business firm. Now, this is with the objective to make profit maximization out of the production input to produce output such as crops and livestock. The second basic concept of farm management is what we call resources or inputs or what we call factors of production. Now, resources are those which get to consume or transform into products in the process of production, and this can be classified into fixed resources and variable resources. Now, fixed resources, the level of some resources like the building, machinery like the tractor and land, are considered fixed over production planning period irrespective of the level of enterprises to be taken up. Now, these are called fixed farm resources. Now, the quantum of fixed resources does not change with the level of production. Now, some of the resources which are fixed during a short period of time and may be variable during the long term period. Now, the cost associated with fixed resources is what we call as fixed cost. Now, the second variable or the second category is the variable resources. Now, some resources like seeds, fertilizer, labor may vary with the level of output. Now, these are variable resources, meaning it varies during the time of production, and the cost associated with the variable resources is what we call as the variable cost. There is another classification of resources. These are the stack resources and the flow resources. Now, stack resources, these resources are used up entirely in the production process. For example, we have fertilizer, seeds, feeds, and many more. These resources can be stored up to be used at a later period. And the flow resources, on the other hand, are factors of production which give only services in the production process. Hence, they are called flow resources because these services, for example, service of a laborer to be rendered on a particular day, this cannot be stored for the future use if not being utilized. The concept of farm management are the following. We have the cost of cultivation, cost of production. We also have independent variable. We have the dependent variable. For the cost of cultivation, these are expenditure incurred on all inputs and input services in raising a crop on a unit is called the cost of production. Now it is being expressed as peso per hectare or peso per acre. Now, the other one is the cost of production. Now, this expenditure is incurred in producing a unit quantity of output. For example, peso per kilogram. Another one is independent variable. Now, a variable whose value does not depend on other variables and influences the dependent variable is what we call the independent variable. For example, to this are land, labor, and capital that will going to influence the output of production. Another one is dependent variable. This variable is dependent on the other variable. And the example for this is the crop or the livestock output of the farm. Under the basic concept of farm management, we also need to take a look on the three terms used in production. We have the total physical product, the average physical product, and the marginal physical product. Now, for the total physical product or the TPP, the total amount of output obtained by using different units of inputs measured in physical units such as kilogram, tons, and etc. We also have the average physical product. This is APP, and the output per unit of input on average is termed as APP and is given by X over Y, or input over output. Now, for the marginal physical product or the MPP, the additional total output is obtained by using the marginal unit of input is measured by the change in output over the change in input. Under farm management concept, we will be tackling about efficiency. Now, efficiency is categorized into three. We have the technical efficiency, the economic efficiency, and the allocative efficiency. Now, when we talk about technical efficiency, this refers to as the ratio of the physical output to input use. Now, this implies using resources as effectively as possible without any wastage. Now, in any type of production, to eliminate waste is one of the basic concern that we can say that a certain line of production is efficient. Now we have the second category, the economic efficiency. Now it is an expression of technical efficiency in monetary terms through the prices. Now if we're able to make the maximum profit per unit, then we can imply that the production is economic efficiently successful. Now, when we say allocative efficiency, this is being used when a possible reorganization of resources is needed, or if production is no longer efficient, meaning there is less yielding, and therefore allocative efficiency refers to resource use efficiency. Now, these are the three types of efficiency. The basic concept of farm management, we need to take a look into the ways of mobilizing farm resources. Now, there are five categories under which we need to take a look into owning, leasing, hiring, joint ownership, and custom services. And to discuss each, we'll be discussing that on the next slide. Under the basic concept of farm management, we need to take a look into ways of how we can mobilize farm resources, under which is owning. Now, resources like land, machinery, tools, equipments necessary to produce goods and commodity from the farm, this can be acquired by purchasing them. Now, owning of resources would be convenient to farmer, especially during peak season, as to carry out the farm operation in time. However, during the lean season, it may be uneconomical to maintain own resources, especially For example, the treasure, the equipments, because hiring would be cheaper than owning the resources, especially when the size of the farm holding is too small. Relatively, on the other hand, if your farm is too wide and too big, it would be economical for a farm to own the machineries, equipment, and necessary tools to produce goods and services from the farm. Another ways to mobilize farm resources is through leasing. Now, the immovable resources like land and buildings can be acquired by leasing. So rent has to be paid based on the terms agreed by the leasee, or what we call the tenants, to the owner of such resources. Now, the landowner may lease out his land to landless agricultural laborers or to farmers who are capable of cultivating large area of farm. The landowner may lease out due to number one, his absenteeism at the village where his land is located. Second, inefficiency in running the farm. Third, running of other more profitable enterprises in the same village. So he don't have time to manage the farm. Fourth, due to their physical inability to cultivate the land. Now, leasing in helps leasee to augment their farm returns. However, leasing out becomes complicated due to improper implementation of agrarian laws, which are more favorable to tenants. The fertility status of the leased out land is gradually deteriorating because the tenants do not apply organic manure and they do not properly maintain the farm assets out of the fear of eviction from the land by the owner. So this is very evident in the Philippines, and therefore the productivity of the leased out land is lesser than that of owned land. On contrary, as the tenancy legislation are more favorable to the tenants, and some of them refuse to surrender their tenancy rights due to owners, and hence the owners are reluctant to lease out lands. In the Philippines, it's very familiar that we are having this practice called renting lands, and the layman's term is through prenda. The farmers can acquire human labor and bullock power through hiring, and this is one way to mobilize farm resources. And the magnitude of employment of hired human labor and bullock power depends upon the following factors. Number one, size of farm holding. If the farm is big, then we need to hire human labor and bullock powers. Number two, numbers of family members available. Now, if there's lesser family members to work in the farm, so we need to hire more labor. Number three, availability of own bullocks. Now, if there's no carabao or any machineries available, then of course the practical way for the farmers to do is to hire bullock power. Number four, resourcefulness of the farmer to replace labor with capital. And fifth, diversification of crop activities practiced in the farm. Now, nowadays, it is being encouraged to diversify our crop in the farm to make sure that we can minimize the production output of our farm venture. However, hiring human labor and bullock power is more economical than that of hired machinery to a small and marginal farms, especially in areas where labor is cheaper. Another way to mobilize farm resources is when the land and buildings are inherited by legal heirs. So there's a joint ownership that will take place. The land gets subdivided, and the buildings are jointly owned among them. And joint ownership is convenient and economical to those who have a small unfragmented inherited land. However, dispute arise due to lack of understanding among joint owners in sharing the responsibility, especially in the maintenance of jointly owned assets. Another basic concept of farm management is product or output. Now, it is the result of the use of resources or services of resources. Now, the resources get transformed into what is known as output. For example, paddy, groundnut, sugarcane, milk, corn, and many more. Another basic concept of farm management is production. It is a process of transformation of resources or inputs like labor, seed, fertilizer, water, etc. into products like wheat, corn, rice, and many more. The basic concept of farm management is the transformation or the production period. Now, production period is the time required for a resource to be completely transformed into a product. For example, from the moment we planted rice to the moment we harvest rice will take 4 months to 5 months. Another one is corn. When we plant corn, we need 3.5 to 6 months to completely harvest the corn. Another basic concept of farm management is a production economics. Now, agricultural production economics is an applied field of science wherein the principle of choice are applied to use of land, labor, capital, and management in farming. Now, the subject matter of production economics explains the condition under which the profit output will be maximized and the cost will be minimized. The main objective of the production economics are as follows. Number one is to determine and define the condition which provide for optimum use of resources. Second is to determine the extent to which the current use of resources deviate from the optimum use. And third is to analyze the factor which influence the existing production patterns and resources use. And lastly is to identify the means and methods of us getting the optimal use of resources. Since we've been discussing about production, now we need to consider discussing the production function. Now, production function is a technical and mathematical relationship describing the manner and extent to which a particular product depends upon the quantities of inputs or services of inputs used in the production process. Now, production functions describes the rate at which resources are transformed into products. Now, there are numerous input-output relationship in agriculture because the rates at which the input are transformed into outputs will vary among the following: the type of soil, animals, technologies, rainfall, and many more. Any given input-output relationship specifies the quantities and qualities of resources needed to produce a particular product. There are types of production function. We have number one, continuous production. Number two, discontinuous production function. And number three, we have short run production function and long run production function. The first type of production function is the continuous function. Now, in this one, the inputs of production can be divided into smaller doses, or the level of input and output can be split into smaller units. For example, fertilizer can be applied in either kilos or per sack of fertilizer. Other types of production function is a discontinuous or discrete function. Now in here, inputs of production cannot be divided into a smaller parts. For example, services of labors to be rendered in harvesting the field of corn is an example of a discrete function. Another type of production function is the short run production function. Now in here, it relates when there is a factor of production that we can consider as fixed. Now for example, now it can be written as Q equals the function of labor and capital. So meaning in this variable, there are one or two or more fixed resources involved to produce a good and a commodities. For example, another example to this one is y represents as the output equals the function of input x sub 1, input x sub 2, input x sub 3, and input x sub 4. Now, we can categorize this input as there are fixed and there are variable resource. Now, for the fixed resources, we can consider that it is in a short run production when there is fixed resources. Now in here, x sub 1 and x sub 2 are fixed resources, and x sub 3 and x sub 4 would be our variable resource. Last type of production function is the long run production function. Now in here, this would mean that the variation in all factors, there are no fixed resources, meaning x, or the output, is equals to the function of input x sub 1, input x sub 2, and so on. And all of the inputs of production are considered variable inputs. That's the end of this presentation. And once again, this is your instructor, Sir Paul. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more videos on agricultural economics. And let me end this by saying, keep on learning and be the solution to the world's many problems. Have a great day and take care, everyone.